The Young and the Restless spoilers. The police arrived at the hospital, their faces stern and serious, as they began their investigation into the cause of the accident. The atmosphere was thick with tension as they approached the emergency room where the injured were being treated. The officers were prepared for the usual questions and procedures, but nothing could have prepared them for the shocking truth they were about to uncover. The person responsible for the accident was none other than Lucy, a young woman who had been behind the wheel in a severely intoxicated state. Lucy, usually composed and cautious, had taken a risk that night. Faith, her close friend, had been unable to drive due to a crippling fear of the road. Fear rooted in a horrific accident she had experienced in the past. That accident had left Faith traumatized, and she had sworn never to get behind the wheel again. Lucy, knowing Faith's history, had bravely volunteered to drive despite her own reluctance. However, the courage she had mustered quickly evaporated as she struggled to maintain control of the vehicle, her anxiety escalating with every passing moment. The situation spiraled out of control when Lucy, her hands trembling on the steering wheel, lost her grip on reality. Clouded by the alcohol coursing through her system, the car veered off the road, crashing violently, and leaving both women gravely injured. But it was Faith who bore the brunt of the impact. Now she lay in a hospital bed, her body battered and bruised, her condition precarious. The doctors had done all they could. The prognosis was grim. Faith had slipped into a coma, and the medical team was not optimistic about her chances of recovery. They feared that she might never wake up, that she would remain in a vegetative state indefinitely, a shadow of her former self. The thought of this was unbearable to those who loved her, especially to Lucy, who could not shake the overwhelming guilt that consumed her. Faith's body, already weakened by her previous accident, had not been strong enough to withstand another trauma. Her physical frailty made her recovery all the more uncertain. Each passing hour felt like an eternity, as her friends and family waited, prayed, and hoped against hope for a miracle. But the reality was harsh. Faith might never return to the life she once knew. As the police delved deeper into the investigation, they made it clear that Lucy would face severe consequences for her actions. The law was unforgiving when it came to driving under the influence, and the fact that Faith was now lying unconscious, perhaps permanently, only made things worse. Lucy was informed that she would be taken to a juvenile detention center, a place where she would be forced to reckon with the gravity of her mistakes. The officers were not unsympathetic, but they had a job to do, and justice had to be served. Lucy was terrified, her mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. The idea of being locked away, of losing her freedom, was horrifying, but even that fear paled in comparison to the dread that filled her heart, the thought of Faith's condition. Lucy had always been the stronger one, protector in their friendship, and now she had failed in the worst possible way. The thought that she might have condemned her friend to a life trapped in her own body was a burden that Lucy did not know how to bear. As the days turned into weeks, the hospital room where Faith lay became a place of quiet despair. Her family kept vigil by her bedside, their faces etched with sorrow and exhaustion. They spoke to her, hoping that somewhere, deep inside, she could hear them and find her way back. Faith remained still, her breath shallow, there, her body unmoving. The only signs of life were the steady beeps of the machines that kept her alive, a haunting reminder of the fragile line between life and death. Lucy, meanwhile, was taken into custody. The cold, sterile environment of the detention center was a stark contrast to the vibrant life she had once known. Days were long and monotonous, filled with mandatory counseling sessions, strict routines, and the relentless ache of regret. Lucy spent countless hours replaying the events of that fateful night in her mind, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. She thought of Faith constantly, her thoughts a mixture of sorrow, guilt, and a desperate hope that somehow, against all odds, her friend would wake up. But as the weeks dragged on, that hope began to fade. The doctor's updates were always the same. There was no change in Faith's condition. She remained unresponsive, her body alive, but her mind a world away. Lucy's heart ached every time she heard those words, and she wondered if she would ever be able to forgive herself. She had made a terrible mistake, and now both she and Faith were paying the price. Inside the detention center, Lucy was isolated, not just from the outside world, but also from herself. The guilt gnawed at her, a constant companion that refused to let go. She knew that she would have to serve her time, to face the consequences of her actions, but the real punishment was knowing that she had hurt the person she cared about most. Faith was more than a friend. She was like a sister to Lucy, someone who had always been there for her. And now Lucy had failed her in the worst possible way. The days turned into months, and still there was no change. Faith's family began to lose hope, and the conversations in the hospital room grew quieter, filled with a resigned acceptance of what seemed inevitable. Lucy, too, started to come to terms with the reality that her friend might never wake up. The thought was unbearable, but it was one she had to face. Every night, as she lay in her small, hard bed in the detention center, Lucy prayed for Faith, for a miracle that would bring her back. But deep down, she knew that miracles were rare, and that this was a burden she would have to carry for the rest of her life. Eventually, Lucy's sentence would end, and she would be released back into the world. But she knew that she would never truly be free. The memory of that night, the choices she made, and the life that was forever changed because of them, would haunt her always. Faith's fate, whether she remained in a coma or miraculously recovered, would be a constant reminder of the consequences of her actions. Lucy would carry that guilt with her forever, a scar that would never fully heal. And so, Lucy's story is one of tragedy, of a young woman who made a terrible mistake and lost so much because of it. But it is also a story of the heavy weight of responsibility, the profound impact that one moment can have on the lives of so many. It is a story of love, loss, and the painful reality that sometimes, no matter how much we wish otherwise, we cannot undo the past.